to the Mentor City Celestica Development Series. I'm actually really encouraged to see so many people communicating so early in this process before Barry has even had an opportunity to connect with each of you. So that's wonderful and encouraging. Sean and I were both talking about that.
Dial in and then
Oh, do you need to dial in?
just allow Pasha, we're ready to begin. Please let the callers know we're starting.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for keeping me honest. Type A, tend to rush too much. Are the callers in?
And whenever you're ready, we're beginning.
Okay, here's your brief moment of music, so I'll transfer you over. Then begin registration. I'm going to call over to Mr. Merritt. One moment, please hold. Good morning. My name is Asha, and I will be your conference operator today. At this time, I would like to welcome everyone to the Mentor City Celestica Speaker Series conference call. All lines have been placed on mute to prevent any background noise. After the speaker's remarks, there will be a question and answer session. If you would like to ask a question during this time, simply press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. If you would like to withdraw your question, simply press the pound key. Thank you. Mr. Rebecca, the mayor, to begin the conference.
Thank you very much. Good morning, afternoon, and good evening to all participants on the call. And welcome to the second Mentor City Celestica Business Speakers Series. We're really excited to have you both here in the room and on the call. And today's discussion is really on mentoring conversations and networking with Barry Siskind. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge in the Toronto site here some external partners who are here with us today. And if I can ask you to stand up when I call out your organizations, just acknowledge and wave to people in the room here. I know you're looking really uncomfortable. The first is Bell Canada. Where do we have our Bell participants? Wow. Good morning, thank you. The second is CIBC. Do we have CIBC here? Hello and welcome. Next is Home Depot. We have Seneca College, Loblaws, and as well as the Canadian Society for Training and Development. I also want to acknowledge you as leaders in this room and external guests and participants on the call that are actually dialing in globally. It's amazing. We have participants from Africa, from Asia, from Americas. So we really are encouraged and excited about this. And as the moderator has said on the call, that we'll be taking questions after the session. But before we begin, I would be also remiss if I didn't introduce Sean Mintz, the president and founder of Mentor City. And as you know, for many of you, Celestica has had a fantastic relationship with Mentor City, launching, what was it, 3 months ago?
Yeah, it's pretty recent.
To all our sort of early entry folks, globally band 6 and above. And I think that represents 4,000 or 5,000 people. And we've seen some remarkable success. So Sean, before we go and introduce Barry, I'd like to have you say a few words.
Sure.
Thank
you so much, Rebecca. And thank you for everyone for joining us both locally and globally today. It's a real honor to be working with Celestica. And about 20 years ago, I worked here. It's so neat to be back in these halls and seeing things that I saw 20 years ago. And it's really neat also to be providing Celestica with a tool that is connecting your employees to mentors. So a few years ago, I started to write a book about mentoring. And I woke up super early for 4 in the morning, and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote. About 4 months later, I was ready to talk to my mentor. And I called up my mentor, who is today's speaker, and my uncle, Barry Siskind. And we set up a meeting. We set up a time for me to meet my mentor. And I remember about a week before this meeting, I was looking at this book and I was like, how can I turn this book into a business? And I said, there's lots and lots of books about mentoring, but there's nothing that really matches people. There's not like an eHarmony of mentoring. And that's when the idea of Mentor City was born. So I went to talk to my uncle and my aunt and about the idea. I was really excited. I just thought about it a couple days ago before our meeting. And they said, this is amazing. What a great idea. And that's the power of mentoring. It's really helping you get to where you want to be. So I'm going to introduce you to today's mentor. Over the past 30 years, Barry Siskind has traveled throughout the world working with thousands of clients in virtually all industry groups, both in the private and public sectors, helping them improve their results at face-to-face events. He's the author of not just one, but 7 best-selling books, including Powerful Exhibit Marketing and Making Contact, the Art of Business Networking. His energetic, motivational, and informative presentation style has earned him a listing in Canada's Who's Who. Please welcome Barry Siskind.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks, Rebecca. That's cool. Hi, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Oh, that's neat. Often when I start a group first thing in the morning, I go, hi, good morning, and I go, good morning. You guys are cool. That's neat. So we're going to talk, well, obviously we're talking about mentoring today, but the area that I'd like to chat with you about is how do you find mentors? And one of those places, amongst many, many places, is through your personal networks. I'm not talking about this kind of networks, I'm talking about face-to-face networks. So let me just give you some background and then we'll get right into this thing. So my background, as Sean told you, is I'm actually in the exhibition business. So my work takes me, as Sean said, around the globe. I help people who get involved with these things called face-to-face marketing. And the most obvious one are trade shows, consumer shows, those kinds of things. So I help companies like yours, participate in, the various shows that you do globally. I've been doing it for a long time. Hopefully I'm doing it well, but I don't know. And what I discovered, it must have been about 10 or 12 years ago, because I had written a few books, and one of the books was on how to participate at a trade show. And my publisher came to me and said, we'd like to do another edition. What do you think? And I said, okay, well, and then I had to go home and kind of figure out what another edition would look like. And through my thinking about it, I realized I had been making a huge mistake with my exhibitors. And the mistake I was making was, I said, if you go to a trade show, you've all been to trade shows, right? Okay. So if you go to a trade show and you're working in a booth or in a stand, I know you guys are there listening around the world. So you're working in the stand, and I was teaching my folks how to get maximum benefit from their time working at that booth. What I forgot to tell them was go work the rest of the show, because there's a gazillion opportunities out there. So I thought, okay, great. Here's sort of the hook for a revised edition of my book. I started doing some research, and what I found out was that working the rest of the show was different. It was different than working in a booth. It was different than making a sales call. It was different than having a meeting of any sort. The skills that were required were networking skills, completely different than anything that I had been exposed to previously. And so, first of all, I was terrified, because I was back then probably the world's worst networker. I hated the idea of doing this. Absolutely. If you guys ever been to a situation where you're going to an industry event of some sort, and there's, you're in a big ballroom of one of the big hotels, and you walk in and there's like 200 movers and shakers of your industry there, and you're all by yourself. Have you ever been in that situation? How many of you really like that? How many of you would rather have had root canal surgery? That was me. Okay. I hated the idea of doing it, but then again, that was a really cool challenge for me. So I went out, did some research, and one of the things that I had the opportunity to do, which was really beneficial to me and really wonderful, was I had a chance to meet people who I thought did this really well. I met ambassadors, and I met government folks who were traveling around the world, and I met business leaders and all kinds of folks who I just watched with admiration. They'd walk in and work a room, and I'd go, wow, I really wish I could do that. Only I'm terrified, right? So anyway, what they taught me was a lot. And some of those lessons that I learned are some of the lessons I'd like to pass along to you this morning, because if you can build a really good, solid, productive network, it's a fabulous place to find mentors. They're there, they're lurking there. And they may not necessarily be obvious to you, because, and you'll see this a little later on, some of the places to find those mentors come from contacts that you already have. You know, you're looking for somebody who's got somebody who's got somebody. So that's what I'd like to show you this morning. Okay, is just some of the things that I learned, and hopefully it's going to help you get out there and build a really good, solid network, and also some things that I would like you to pass along to some of your employees. You know, if you're a little hesitant about this idea of networking, believe me, some of your employees will be as well. So here's some things that you can pass along to them as you're encouraging each and every one of them to build their own personal network. So I'm going to go through some stuff with you. I want to talk to you about what networking is all about. We'll go through some stuff, and I'll explain to you how I define networks. What I'd like to do is to show you a couple of skills, and I thought it might be fun to focus on what most networkers find the most difficult networking situation to be in, which is the one I've already described, working a room. So if I can show you a few things, a few tips to help you work a room, knowing there's a gazillion other places you can network. If I can show you the toughest, maybe you can take some of that stuff and that'll encourage you to do all of the other ones that are out there. So I want to show you some of those. Then where I'd like to end our conversation up is to talk to you about something really interesting, really cool, because what I learned is that when you pull your network together, this is your personal network of contacts that you have, not a mailing list, people you know, okay? So when you pull that together, it needs to be balanced in order to work properly. And when I first learned what I'm going to show you guys later on, the balance, it is so incredibly simple and elegant, and it works. And its elegance is in its simplicity. So I want to show that to you a little later on to show you how to make sure that this thing is balanced. When it's balanced, it works. It's profitable, it's fun, it provides balance to your life so that your life works the way you want it to work. And anyway, so stick with me, because I want to show you that one later on, because I just thought it was so neat when I first learned it, so I'm going to share that with you. If you guys want to take some notes, take down some notes, that's fine. I'll leave my PowerPoint if you want that later. You can certainly have the slides, and then we'll chat. Fair enough? You guys will stick with me? You guys on telephone line will stick with me? They're all nodding their heads too. Okay, good. Listen, before we start, I know you guys don't all know each other. We had a chance to meet some of our guests in the front row, and they just stood up. But I thought it might be fun, before we start, to do a quick little networking exercise. Like, I'll have time to kind of go row by row and have you all stand up and introduce yourself. That would just take too long. We only have an hour. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to give you about 2 minutes to begin a networking exercise. Okay, so here's what I'd like you to do in the next 2 minutes. First of all, everybody get your business cards out. Oh no, you forgot your business cards. You're in a networking workshop. For those of you who have business cards, get your business cards out. Now, here's what I'd like you to do in the next 2 minutes. I would like you to introduce yourself to the person on your right, and the person on your left, and the person in front of you, and the person behind you. Then once you've met those 4 people, I want you to get up out of your chair, and I want you to go to the other side of the room, and I want you to meet 4 more people who you don't know now. Your objective in 2 minutes is to meet 8 people. Go.
I've never met you, I think. Someone introduced myself. I'm Helen. Kristen. Oh, you're so I can email from you. Hi.
Hello, I'm Renee. I know awesome. Hello, I'm
How many of you met 8 people? Quick show of hands. How many of you met more than 8? Good, we got a couple. Yeah, good for you. Okay. Listen, you've only begun this. I just gave you 2 minutes to start. So when we're finished, you don't have to run out. There's a whole bunch of cupcakes. You can, sorry, telephone people don't get the cupcakes. So, when we're finished, don't just run out. Spend a little bit of time, meet a few more people. I mean, that's what this thing is all about. It's all about. All right, so let us begin. So, as I told you, the way I earn a living is in the business of face-to-face marketing, people meeting people face-to-face. What we have learned, and when you take a look at all the studies on face-to-face, is that there is so much technology that is driving us away from face-to-face that the need for actually meeting people eyeball to eyeball has never been greater. People trust people more when they can see them. People are much more willing and faster to make decisions once they see people face to face. So when I'm talking about networking, I'm not talking about that. What I am talking about is this face-to-face networking, actually meeting people face to face. And it is becoming that much more difficult to do in 2013 than it was, even 10 years ago. Just because I think of technology. Found this really cool cartoon the other day. I thought it would be interesting. This is part of my planet. If you guys can't read it in the back, I'll read it. FYI, making eye contact doesn't mean texting a photo of your eyes. It doesn't. That's not what it's about at all. It's all about meeting people face to face, giving them a chance to understand who you are, giving you another chance to understand who they are, and making some decisions about where they fit into your network. So, let's just chat about networking. You guys all know the difference between networking and schmoozing? You ever heard that expression? You know what the difference is? I remember doing this workshop a long time ago for a group in Montreal. And I said, what's the difference between networking and schmoozing? And a woman put up her hand and she said, alcohol. Maybe. Let me just talk to you about it, because you see, I think in order to get to the point of being really good networkers, we've got to go through various stages. Stage 1, I call the schmoozer. You've all seen schmoozers. These are people you just meet in the hall, and you shake hands, and you always end up the conversation about, gee, we really ought to do lunch, and you never do, because you probably can't remember their name, right? Anyone have trouble remembering names? There's another interesting one. Yeah. Anyway, schmoozers are people who have no direction to the connection at all. There's no plan, there's no outcome, there's no focus, and therefore there's no business. And when I'm talking about business, I'm talking the business of your life. Not necessarily the business of Home Depot or Celestica, it's your business. And when we just meet people by happenstance, when we have no plan, when we have no direction to the conversation, nothing happens. You all recognize the schmoozers of the world? Okay. Then we have the next phase, which is probably a little bit better, but I call that yuck. Okay? Phase 2 is yuck. Now, the yuck folks are focused on the short term. That means that what they do is they look at the person as a potential contact for them. They look at somebody and go, could you be a mentor to me? Yeah, great, I want to talk to you. No, goodbye, right? And that's what happens. It's short term. And what we're not doing is looking at people in terms of that long-term potential that they have for you. So it's beyond the obvious. That's the yuck. And the problem with being in the yuck stage is that usually they have these people who are doing this, just focused on the short term, have a very, very high burnout rate. They get out there and they try, and they're building networks, and they're looking for mentors, and they're doing all the stuff they have to do, and eventually they get to the point where they just don't do anything anymore because they're just burnt out, because they're so short-term focused, so focused on what I can get from you right now. That's just an incredible pressure to have, and it just isn't productive. Y'all met the yuck folks? Okay. All right, so this is where I want to take you, all right? The networkers. Networkers are people who are focused on the long term. So when I meet you, or when you met some folks in the audience today, when you met them and you started to chat with them, I hope you saw some potential as potential mentors, potential people to have in your network. And that would be really cool. But what if you didn't see any immediate potential? What about the potential for tomorrow, or next week, or next month, or next year? You see, often we don't look that way. And what I'm trying to ask you to do is to reframe this expression business, because it's the business of your life. Your life is going to be for a long time now. So let's not only look right now, let's see what's going to happen in the future. That's what networkers do, is they look to the future as well as today. Networkers have a plan. You know, they know what they want and they know how to go out and get it. They have an outcome. This is where I want to be, but I'm going to go through a little exercise and show you how to do that. They have a focus to what they want. Have you ever seen people who are not focused? I remember all kinds of folks in my career who would just, you know, jump from one thing to the next. You know, it was whatever the flavor of the month was. And it was so difficult to watch these folks, because they would put so much energy into this, and then next month they'd be putting an equal amount of energy into something else. Total lack of focus. Total lack of it. They get lots of business. But the bottom line for networkers, the bottom line, in my opinion, is that folks who do this well lead a really well-balanced life. I know you want a network, a mentor to help you kind of move up and, you know, find better careers and all that kind of stuff. But there's so much more to it than that. It's about you. It's about your life. It's about you being happy in your skin. If you're not, what's the point? What's the point? That, to me, is networking. That's where I'd like to show you some skills and on how you can actually accomplish that. So where we start this whole thing is asking yourself, what do you want? What are your objectives? What are you trying to accomplish? Well, why do we even do that? And there's a number of reasons. One of them is to get focused. You know, if you can kind of focus on what's important for you, then you can now put together a plan to accomplish that. When you try to take on too much, you're just diluting the plan. Second reason is to plan time. Now this is really interesting. I have noticed this so many times when I chat with people who get out there and go to these networking events, okay, and I talk about time planning, because time management really takes on two different areas here. One area is picking and choosing which events you ought to go to. You could literally be networking 24/7, 365. You could be doing, but like, who wants to do that? That's insane. You need time to stop. You need time to sit in front of the television and do nothing. You need time to, you know, spend time with your families. I mean, we all need to balance our lives. So what we need to do is to plan the time that we can get out there and actually do this. The other part of time planning happens once you get to an event. So let me tell you a story. So when I was doing the research for the book, I would talk to folks who I considered to be good networkers, and some of those folks were, well, a lot of those folks were in sales. Okay, so I'm talking to sales managers, VP sales, you know, that level. And I sit down and I would start the interview off by saying, do you encourage your staff to network? Now the answer is yes, okay, but it was just my way of starting the conversation. So I said, okay, give me a typical scenario. So here would be a typical scenario, okay? So you've got an executive in charge of sales. There's a big industry event coming up. They've got a couple of tickets. They can't go. So what do? They offer the opportunity to one of their folks to get out there and meet some people. Great opportunity, right? So here would be a typical story they would tell me. So I'd have a ticket. Big event would come up. So I'd call in, you know, maybe one of my junior folks, give them an opportunity to do some face-to-face time with some of the people in the industry. And what they would do is I would give the ticket to someone and say, go, have a good time, meet some neat people in our business, but come back tomorrow and tell me how it goes. So now their person is holding the ticket in their hand, their stomach just flipped over, right? Oh my God, what am I going to do now, right? So then they'd be absolutely terrified. So now they get to the event and they're looking really spiffy and they get all dressed up and, you know, they've done everything they want. They walk into the front door of this big ballroom. Now we've got a couple of hundred strangers there, and you've got some neophyte holding their ticket, right? Doesn't know what they're doing. They stand there, they look at this room full of people, and what do? They make a beeline for the bar. Okay, so now they're at the bar, they're nursing a drink, and beside them is another neophyte networker who is also scared out of their tree and doesn't know what they're doing, right? And the two of them talk and talk and talk and talk throughout the entire event. So, next morning, the boss would call this person into his office and he'd say, "So, did you go?" And he'd go, "Oh yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity, it was great." You'd go, "Okay, that's fine, but tell me, did you meet some people?" And the person would go, "Yeah, I did." And then he'd say, "How many?" They'd go, "You know, there's only one letter difference between networking and not working." You'll work that out later. Okay. Anyway, that's what it's about in terms of planning time. If you go to one of these events and get stuck with one person for the entire event, look at the opportunity you've wasted. There's 198 other people you should have been talking to. That's called planning time. That's why we set objectives. And the last one is to recognize opportunities. And as I said to you before, the opportunities are not just short term. They will encompass your entire life. That's pretty ominous when you think about it. You know, when you think about the opportunities you have when you meet people, and each and every person you meet has the opportunity to impact your life somehow. That's a huge responsibility for you to carry as you do this job. So having some good solid objectives, I think, really makes some sense. The last one on my list is this thing called self-motivation. I mean, listen, you'll find 1,000 reasons not to do this. It's snowing out. It's not snowing out. It's raining. I want to watch a ball game. I mean, there's a gazillion reasons not to do it. And I don't think anybody can teach you self-motivation. I have friends who do this motivational speaking, and I say, like, how do you teach somebody that? I don't think anybody can teach you that. But I think if there's some value in it for you, that will give you what you need in order to do what you have to do in order to build these networks. So that's why we all set objectives. So let me just quickly go through this. We only have an hour today, and I have so much I want to talk to you about, but I want to introduce this to you. Some of you may have already been doing stuff like this, and that's fine. For some of you who haven't done it, I'll give you some clues on what to look for. Sean on the Mentor City site, go take a look. He'll have some clues for you as well. But I just want you to think about your objectives and what you're trying to accomplish. Your objectives fall into 3 large categories. Category number 1 are called your long-term objectives. That's the big picture. So here's an interesting exercise. If you've done it, great. If you haven't done it, do it. If you're employees, if you're just sitting down talking to somebody, okay, you might want to ask this question sometime. Question is, where do you see yourself in 10 or 15 or 20 years from today? A lot of people will look back at you and go, huh? I don't know where I'm going to be tomorrow morning. Right? You're telling me where I'm going to be in 20 years from now? No way. But what's really interesting is that the folks who are the best networkers know where they're going to be in 10 or 15 or 20 years from now. They've got that big picture down pat. And does that mean the big picture is carved in stone? Absolutely not. I mean, you create the picture, you say, this is what's important for me, this is where I'd like to end up, this is the kind of things I'd like to accomplish in my life and where I'd like to be in 15 or 20 years from now, and you do it now. And then all of a sudden, real life takes over and your picture changes and it hones. But at least by having it, you have a focus. You have a direction. You have something that's propelling you towards something that's important for you. The business of your life. What you do professionally, what you do personally. All of that is the business of your life. I don't know, have any of you done sort of a long-term plan like that? I mean, there's a gazillion books, go to chapters, and there's a gazillion books on career life planning, and those will help you if you've never done the exercise, or if any of your employees have never done it. I cannot overemphasize the value of doing it. It is just an absolutely amazing exercise. I did it for me, oh God, long time ago. And I remember it took me almost a year to come up with a picture that I really thought would be beneficial to me. Something that I said, you know, all of a sudden, 30 years from now, if I can accomplish that, I'm going to be a really happy camper. And a lot of the things changed. You know, the yacht on the Mediterranean kind of went by the wayside. Because I realized, you know, in order to get one of those super yachts, this is what you got to do, and I wasn't prepared to quite do all of that. So the picture changed, the picture honed, you know, and all that. But it was still basically the same, you know, the principles of that picture were still the same. If you've never done this, do it. It is such a wonderful exercise. And encourage all your staff to do it. You'll be amazed. The step number 2 is called your short term. Now the short term are the steps you need in order to accomplish the long term. The long term is 20 years down the road. The short term is next year. You need to think about how you're moving towards that big picture goal. So let me just share something with you that I've been doing for a long time. I do this particular exercise with my wife, and we do it once a year. New Year's Eve, okay? So we spend New Year's Eve and we sit by the fire and we chat, and what we do is we take a look at our lives. And I'm suggesting this to you because, you know, it's kind of neat to know that your partner is going to be in the long-term picture with you. That was an assumption, if that's not true. But, you know, in my case, I wanted to be. So what we do every year is we take a look at our lives individually, and we take a look at our lives as a couple, and we have categories. We just made them up. We add categories, we subtract categories. Each year we take a look at them. Categories like money, career, travel, family, health. You know, I mean, you know, we got a gazillion things, right? And each year we take a look at where we want to be, and then we said, okay, this is what I accomplished last year, and this is what I'd like to accomplish next year. And it's really interesting. Like, see, I've got this whole gaggle of kids, okay? And 5 of them. And so I've got all these kids, and what was happening to my wife and I was that we were spending so much time putting out fires. One year just kind of bled into the next, to the next, to the next. And all of a sudden it was 5 or 10 years later, we go, where'd it go? We had no idea what we accomplished other than raising 5 cool kids. Well, this gave us an opportunity every year to look at what we had actually accomplished and set goals for the next one. And if we blew it and didn't do one, then, you know, don't beat yourself up about it. You decide, is it still important? If it's important, then put it on the list for next year. I mean, the one we really messed up with was exercise. Okay, I can't tell you how many years we procrastinated about that one. But you know what? We didn't beat ourselves up for not doing as much as we had wanted to. We just kind of, you know, set some more realistic goals the next year. This is absolutely imperative for you and for your employees to do stuff like this, because you can't just focus on the long term without knowing how to get there. This is the roadmap. The third level are called specific event objectives, and these are the objectives we set one event at a time. You see, one of the things you should have thought about doing before you came here this morning was to think about, okay, what do I want from sitting through this workshop? Yes, we'll learn some stuff, I hope, but also I have an opportunity to meet people. Which people? What do I want to do with those people? Who am I looking for? Yeah, I mean, really think about it, you know, very strategically, so that you can now know what you want to accomplish from the event you're attending. Then you can put together a plan of action on how to accomplish it. We don't have time to go through objectives in much more detail than that. I wanted to introduce it to you because it is such a hugely important part of the process. So I'm going to leave it with you. Go online, there's a million resources that can help you do this. You know, talk to Sean, go to the Mentor City site, and you'll find a whole bunch of resources there that'll help you do it. But do it. It is really important that you do. Are you okay with that? You guys okay in telephone land? Once again, nodding their heads, I can hear that. Okay. All right, so let me teach you some stuff. So now we're going out and we're actually going to work an event. We're talking about your whole life. There's a lot of people that you need and that you want to meet in your whole life, correct?
Angela said great content online.
Sorry?
Angela said great content.
Oh, I did. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you. One of the things I learned is that in order to make your network work, all you need. Did Angela say something else? Angela's my street woman somewhere in the world. All you need in order to make your network work are two people. If you have these two people in your network, it works. And when we can look at it that way, as simplistic as it is, it makes this whole process a little bit less onerous. Now, we need to have these two people in our network, and we need to have them balanced correctly, which I'll show you in a couple of minutes, but let me just introduce the two people you need. Person number one are known as achievers. We need to have an achiever in our network. So what's the definition of an achiever? These are contacts who can help you achieve your short and long-term goals. You all know who your achievers are? Who might they be? Give me some examples.
The boss.
Your boss, you bet. Who else?
Career sponsor.
A career sponsor, yes, excellent. Who else?
Coach on a team.
A coach, yeah. Any others? Angela, did you have one? Okay, yeah, so these are the folks. We know who these folks are. They're pretty easy to identify. These are the people who can help us accomplish our short and long-term objectives. And remember, long-term is way beyond today. So when we're thinking, you see, that's why we have to get so focused on where we're going. So when we're meeting people, we can say, yeah, you can help me accomplish such and such. Right? Okay, good. That's one of the persons that you need to have in your network. The other group of people that are so important for you are known as nurturers. And nurturers are defined as people who can provide a balance to your life. These are the nice people. These are the folks who can cheer you up when you need to be cheered up. These are the folks that can support you when you need to be supported. Are you all familiar with who your nurturers are? And they are just as important to have in your network as achievers. Because they can teach you how to live. If you only focus on one aspect of your life, then you're missing something, you're missing that balance. And that's when you suffer from burnout, and that's when all kinds of other things happen with it. Are you all familiar with your nurturers? Family, friends, people that you meet, right? Okay. And every time you meet somebody, what you're going to do is decide whether they're a nurturer or an achiever for you. Now, some of you may be thinking that, okay, I could be a nurturer for somebody because I have such a nurturing personality. Did anybody do that? The point is, it doesn't matter. Okay? When we choose to have you as a nurturer or an achiever for us, what's important is that it's in the eyes of the person who is accepting you. So when I meet you and I take a look at you and I make a decision if you're going to be a nurturer or an achiever for me, it's my choice, not yours. It's got nothing to do with your personality. When you look at other people and decide how they fit into your network, you choose. Some people, are better for some people are better for other people, but it all comes down to your choice. Does that make sense? Okay, so now the question is, how do we find nurturers and achievers? And our mentors fall into those categories. They do. And it depends on what we're trying to accomplish. Let me give you an example. So I live in Toronto now, but I used to live in Caledon, in horse country, if you guys know Caledon. And so when I moved up to Caledon, I had a dream. I wanted a horse. I know nothing about horses, okay? But I wanted a horse. My exposure to pets have been dogs and goldfish. One of the things I knew about horses, you can't flush them when they die. Right? Okay? So I knew nothing about horses. So I was doing a workshop and I was telling some folks that, someday I'd really like to have a horse, and this is my whole story. But I know I can't have a horse now, right? I knew then, because I traveled too much, and I know horses take a lot, that's what I did learn, was that horses take an awful lot of care. You've got a lot of time to take care of these animals. I got that. So I was chatting with a group of people, and a woman came up to see me afterwards, and she said, so you're looking to buy a horse? And I go, yeah, someday I'd really like to do that. She said, you're going to need someone to help you understand how to take care of an animal like that. And I went, yeah. And she said, know what I do? And I go, what? She said, I teach people how to take care of horses. What is she for me, a nurturer and an achiever?
Achiever.
Exactly, exactly, okay? Now, we were in, I think it was in Kingston or someplace, okay, so it was far away from me. The chances of me going to Kingston to get horse lessons was pretty slim. But you see what I realized, because I realized my goals, my long-term goals? This woman who came to me would be part of a network of other horse whisperers or whatever they were, right? So, and so I kept her in my network as an achiever. I stayed in contact with her, and then when the time came, what I knew I was going to do was contact her and say, okay, now I'm ready for a horse. Coming to Kingston to get information is going to be really difficult. Do you know anybody in the Caledon area? She was an achiever for me. That's what I'm talking about. That's what it's all about. So, let's just talk about your strategies. How are you actually going to do that? So the first thing is, now we're going to go to an event. We're going to start chatting with people. And one of the things we're going to do when we talk to people at an event is we're going to make a decision about something. The decision is, are you, for me, a nurturer or an achiever? So, how am I going to find that out? The answer is pretty simple. I'm going to ask you some questions. I'm going to come up, I'm going to introduce myself, we're going to start chatting. Oh, let me show you this one. Sorry, telephone people, you're not going to be able to see this, but you're going to be able to hear this one. How do you break into a group? How do you start talking to people? This is really terrifying. So one of the things you're going to do is you're going to do like, the story I told you before. You're going to walk through the front door, okay? And then what I want you to do is make a beeline for the bar. But there's a reason for that, because usually the bar is at the far end of the event room. That's just the way they get set up, okay? So what I want you to do is walk through the front door, start walking towards the bar,